Today on episode number 598 of the School of Podcasting, it's the last episode of the year. That means this is our traditional, what is your favorite podcast and why? I asked and you answered. I love it. You're going to hear about a lot of really cool podcasts. And we've got a mega mix of Because of My Podcast stories. Hit it, ladies.
The School of Podcasting with Dave Jackson.
Podcasting since 2005. I am your very own personal podcast coach, Dave Jackson, thanking you so much for tuning in. Today's going to be a lot of fun. I'm so glad you're here. If you're new to the show, I help you massage your message. I help you tackle that technology. I help you face your fears, flatten the learning curve, and not just get you podcasting. Because look, you can go watch a bunch of old, outdated YouTube videos to do that. I help you start podcasting in the right direction. My website is schoolofpodcasting.com. If you go to schoolofpodcasting.com/start, use the coupon code LISTENER, well, then you will save when you sign up. And I really, really, really look forward to working with you. Well, it's the last episode of the year, as I said at the beginning of the show. And if you're new to the show, we do this, I think the last 4 or 5 years I have done this. And I've simply asked everybody who listens, I say, hey, if you could only listen to one, kind of the desert island kind of scenario, what would you listen to? And more importantly, why? And I'm going to say this before we get into this. I am humbled the fact that I keep throwing questions out to you and you keep replying. I absolutely do not take that for granted. And I'm even more amazed that that we just get great information. This is stuff you're not going to get anyplace else. That's the thing. As I was listening to these answers here and I was shaping them up and running them through Auphonic and editing out ums and nos and things like that, I was like, this is cool because I've not heard of any of these shows. I've heard of a couple, but in many cases, it's super niche stuff. And you know me, I'm going to blurb in here and point out things that people are saying. The big thing that came up, and just listen for this, listen to how many times people say they go deep. They go deep into this subject. It's not like your 7-minute, Jimmy Fallon interview. Not that there's anything wrong with Jimmy Fallon. I watch him every night, but people like to go deep into a topic. That's the whole point of podcasting. It's a niche. And people go, oh, great, you're going to talk about this. And then they want to go super deep. So with that, let me shut up and let's start cranking these out.
Hi, Dave. This is Kit Parks with the Active Travel Adventures podcast, where I curate multi-day adventure travel vacations for fit folks. I subscribe to about 30 podcasts and regularly listen to all the episodes of 20 of those. Of those, my favorite would probably be StoryBrand. It's the one that when I see a new episode has been released, I listen to it that day. The hosts, JJ and Donald Miller, are very engaging. You feel like you're in the room with them. Their guests are interesting, informative. I come away learning something I can put into practice that day in my business. And it's a fun show.
Thank you, Kit. And links to both everybody who sent things in and the podcast that they're mentioning. All the links will be out at schoolofpodcasting.com/598.
Hey, Dave. This is Adam, the creator from Dark Knight Minute. It's the podcast where my team and I analyze the Christopher Nolan Dark Knight trilogy 1 minute at a time. You can find us at geekmindfusion.com or moviesbyminutes.com. My favorite podcast is Digital Dads. It is at digitaldads.fm, and they talk about being dads that raise digital natives when we are digital immigrants. The reason it is my favorite is because it was my first podcast that I ever listened to. They always have an inspiring message, and they always encourage all of their listeners to level up and do better, and they provide us ways and ideas on how to do that. So if I could only listen to one, it would be them. Thanks, Dave. Appreciate all that you do. Take care.
Thanks, Adam. I've heard about your show because I went, wait, they do what? 1 minute at a time? Yep, they sure do. Moviesbyminutes.com.
Hi, Dave Jackson. I am Anna Seawald, host of the Authentic Moments podcast, which is a show about personal growth in the context of parenting. If all the podcasts disappeared from my library one day. The only one that I truly will miss is The Good Life Project by Jonathan Fields. Why do I love this show? Because he brings in amazing guests with powerful stories, and he conducts in-depth, unfiltered conversations. He conducts them in person, so it truly makes a very intimate and warm audio experience. It was great meeting you in person at DC Podfest. Wishing you Merry Christmas and thanks for all you do.
Thank you, Anna. Yes, it was great. I got to meet you and I got to meet Darwyn Dave at DC Podfest.
Hey, Dave. This is Darwyn Dave from the Dealing with My Grief podcast at dealingwithmygrief.com. And my favorite podcast is the Grief Dreams podcast, which can be found at griefdreams.ca. It's a podcast that is run by Joshua Black and Shawn Ram out of Ontario, Canada. Joshua happens to be a PhD candidate in psychology, and he is focusing on, as the podcast name suggests, grief dreams. People who have dreams of deceased family members, pets, doesn't matter. And he's into really getting information into why people dream, maybe why some people don't have dreams of their loved ones, and then helping those individuals make sense out of the dreams that they've had. And the reason that this happens to be my favorite podcast is that since I started listening to the podcast and started getting into some of the journeys that some of these individuals have had post the loss of a loved one, I've come to know Joshua very well. We've interviewed each other on our different podcasts, and we've sort of formed a bond or a relationship sort of similar to that of you and Daniel J. Lewis and Ray Ortega. So it's just proof that individuals can be in the same space or the same niche or niche and not necessarily be competitors, but actually sort of join forces to explore a common subject and to gather information and to help the masses as it relates to that particular subject matter. Thanks again for everything you do, and we'll talk to you later. Bye.
Yes, if you have podcasters that do similar shows or they are on a different take of the same subject, definitely do what Darwyn and Josh did. They kind of bonded over the topic. Can we take a quick 5-second tangent since we're talking grief dreams? Shortly after my mom died, I was in my 20s, and she was in my dream. And what was weird is in the dream, I was in my original bedroom, like at my parents' house. She came in, sat down to the bed, let me know that everything was going to be okay. And then she gave me a hug. And when she did, this yellow like light, like it was like we were in a snow globe of yellow light that was just like the coolest feeling ever. It was warm and safe and was just like, and it was awesome. And then when she let go, the light went away and I woke up, and I swear the rest of my life I've been trying to get back to that feeling, but that's not the freaky part. The freaky part is a couple days later, I'm hanging out with my brother and he explains to me that he had basically the same dream at the same time. That's freaky. All right. End of tangent. Back to the show.
Hi, Dave. This is Ben Branham from Modern Self-Protection Podcast. My favorite podcast has got to be the Survival Podcast with Jack Spirko. The name can sound off-putting, but the guy is really cool. He does a podcast 5 days a week. He puts a lot of good business stuff in his podcast, a lot of good stuff just about podcasting. And then he does the survival end too, but not the end of the world, we're all going to die survival stuff that everybody normally thinks of, like the Mayan calendar end. He does things that you could use every day to make your life better. Just little things. Get out there and garden, improve your diet and what you eat, live longer that way. Do things to make your car safer. A lot of little things that you can just use every day in your life and enjoy. He does some of the end of the world survival stuff too, and off-grid living, housing, bug outs, all that cool stuff. So you get a lot of variety in his show, and I really enjoy it, and I've been listening for years. The reason I keep coming back is he is super passionate, and he motivates me all the time to get out there and just make life better in general. Thanks for all that you do, Dave. I love your show. And thanks for this opportunity to be on it. This was Ben Branham from Modern Self-Protection Podcast.
Ben, thank you so much. Yeah, anybody that motivates you, I'm down for that.
Hey, Dave. This is Abby Nemec from ATimeForHorses.com, home of the Storytelling podcast about horses, horse people, and the horse business. I gotta say, Picking my favorite podcast for 2017 was pretty tough because this year I got into audio drama. Now, audio drama is wonderful because you can listen to a season and then it ends, and then you have room in your schedule to listen to another audio drama. It's awesome. Picking a favorite? Not so much. But in the end, I got to give the nod to Wooden Overcoats. Wooden Overcoats is a sitcom about the great Undertaker rivalry on the British Channel island of Piffling, and it's really, really funny. They are winners of the British Podcast Awards, and Season 3 is in production now, so check it out, woodenovercoats.com. Thanks for everything you do, Dave, and Happy New Year.
Thank you, Abby. I know Abby because she signed up to have her podcast reviewed on the Podcast Review Show. I'll have a link to that out in the show notes. Again, all the links, schoolofpodcasting.com/598.
Hi, Dave. This is Brian Ensminger. I'm the host of the Engaging Missions Show, where every week I share stories from missionaries and church planters and what they've seen happening around the world. This year, my favorite podcast is the School of Podcasting. That's right. It's your show. There are a lot of shows that I really like, but this year, yours is my favorite. I love everything about the production value of what you do, how you bring your personality into it. I even love Bernie the cat. I like what you do as far as interviewing and how incredibly good you are at finding quality guests and then finding and digging for those incredible stories and then how you put that all together into a cohesive whole. I absolutely love your show. Thanks so much for all that you do.
And Brian, I did not cut you off. That's the way the file came in. And if you ask my ex-wife, she will tell you I have a hard time accepting compliments, and it's true. I told Bernie, I asked him right now, Bernie, what's your favorite show? And I look back, and apparently it's Sleep With Me, because he's always asleep, basically. When you're 18 and you're a cat, that's what you do. So I'm going to put him down for Sleep With Me because apparently it works really, really well.
Hey, Dave, this is Clay from the Fishnerds podcast. You can find our podcast over at fishnerds.com. And I'm calling in to answer the question about what podcast, if I can only listen to one podcast, what would it be? I think I would go with the Beyond Data podcast. It's a relatively new show, but I would choose that one because first, it's usually about fish, which I really like. But second, it looks at data and then it looks at anecdotes and puts them together to tell the real story of fisheries and kind of some real science in the world. And my friend Rhett Talbot is the maker of that podcast. It's super great, interesting, funny. It's got all the stuff you want from a nerdy show. And of course, it's usually about fish, and I'm very, very partial to fish.
Thank you, Clay. Clay is another guy. I finally got to meet Clay Groves from Fishnerds. I met him at Podcast Mid-Atlantic, and it was great meeting him. And this is one of the cool things when you meet somebody and they're just like they are on the show. He's an entertaining and fun guy, and I got to hang out with him and Harry Durant from Podcast Junkies at Podcast Mid-Atlantic, and it was just a good time. So, and who knew that the guy from Fishnerds would like a show that really, really went uber deep about fishing? Shocking.
Hi, Dave. My name is Danielle. I have a podcast called Everybody's National Parks, which can be found on my website, everybody'snationalparks.com. If I had to choose one podcast that is my favorite, it would have to be Wow in the World. It's very hard to choose one, but I'm selecting this one as my favorite because it's the one podcast I can listen to in the car with my kids, where we all enjoy it and we can't wait to hear the next episode. Mindy Thomas is hilarious, and we love Guy Raz's voice. We laugh a lot, and we learn so much. They have a great way of presenting interesting information, questions we wonder about in a funny, entertaining, and informative way. So there you go. Thank you very much. And check out Everybody's National Parks. Thank you.
Thank you, Danielle. And of course, I met Danielle at DC Podfest. This next one is so cool, not only because it comes across the pond, but just listen to what his podcast is. And then I've heard a lot about the podcast that he talks about, and he really goes into why this show is talked about all the time.
Hi, Dave. I'm Paul from the Fighting Through podcast. Fighting Through is about personal war memoirs, which I've been sent whilst researching the World War II memoirs of my own father, Bill Cheel. So my show covers first-hand accounts from World Wars I and II. Always great unpublished history. The memoirs vary from experiences at Dunkirk to D-Day and beyond, and they include writings from Dunkirk ship's captains to rear gunners in a Lancaster bomber, with scenes which vary from scary to side-splittingly funny, as these guys were always able to see the humour as well as the tragedy. My website is fightingthroughpodcast.co.uk. I'm going to propose Dan Carlin's Hardcore History as my favourite podcast because I find his work hugely entertaining, and it's also, for me, the best I've found in the war history genre. He's got to be the storyteller's storyteller, if there is one. He must also be the guy for whom the phrase "content is king" was invented, because with his show, it's very much about the content. And I'm sure each episode must take weeks and months to produce because it's all handcrafted narrative. And he weaves it into a dramatic sequence of thought-provoking questions. Dan has a great skill in using silence to allow the listener to take in what he's saying without rushing too quickly to the next point. The episode I've just listened to is number 59, Blitz, the Destroyer of Worlds, and it's about the advent of the nuclear age, and it's a 6-hour blockbuster. It's just the opposite of today's dumbed-down TV and radio, and I have to say it's as perfect as school as podcasting for total immersion in a subject. Well, nearly. Not only does Dan provide a good backstory to each element of his discussion, he also provides the backstory to the backstory and beyond. So he produces layer upon layer of discussion, which slowly draws you into the debate in such a way that you feel compelled to stay right through to the very end. It's like eat, sleep, work, and listen to Dan Carlin till you've finished all 6 hours. He throws away all the rules that us mere mortals have struggled to learn, so there's no music, no frippery, few calls to action, nothing but multiple hours of gripping content in each show, and none of your proverbial perfect 22-minute episodes. You know, I think I'm going to have to start my own show all over again. I'm Paul from fightingthroughpodcast.co.uk. Bye-bye now.
Paul, thank you so much. And when I hear your show, that's a great example of content that you cannot get anyplace else. That's amazing. I'm definitely going to be checking out your show. And as for Dan Carlin, if you've never heard of him, I have yet to listen to his show. And after listening to Paul's review, I've got to make that happen in 2018. I just hear 6 hours and I go, yeah. But here's a guy that he breaks every rule in podcasting. He doesn't release on a regular basis. His shows are 6 hours long. And he doesn't, I don't even know if he has a high OPR 40. And it's not called Hardcore History on Fire. And yet, when he releases an episode, he gets literally, I'm not making this up, 1 million downloads in 24 hours. I mean, I work for Libsyn, if you didn't know that. And when he releases, he's on Libsyn. And he gets so much traffic that the tech guys kind of go, oh, what's going on? Oh, it's just Dan. But he does get our attention. Like, what's going on? Oh, it's just Dan.
Hey Dave, this is Justin Mollick from the podcast Optimal Living Daily. You can find me at oldpodcast.com. My favorite podcast is The Feed from Libsyn. Most of the podcasts I listen to these days are podcasts about podcasting because I like to stay up to date with what's going on and how to always improve my shows. And The Feed has become my favorite for a few reasons. First, I've asked multiple questions, probably 4 or 5, and they've answered all of them on the show. And I feel like every time I listen, I get something noteworthy, no pun intended, out of it. Like literally I'll write it in my notes, which is very rare for me with other shows. It's the only one that I've tweeted them saying, hey, it's Saturday, I don't see a new episode. So yeah, that's got to take the cake for my favorite podcast. But I do love your show too, Dave. Thanks a lot.
I too am a big fan of The Feed. I listened to that show before I worked for Libsyn. And how can you go wrong with 2 Hall of Fame podcasters, Elsie Escobar and Rob Walsh?
Dave, this is Kim from Toastmasters101.net. My podcast is about Toastmasters, how to improve your public speaking and leadership skills. I can be found at Toastmasters101.net. You asked my favorite podcast this year, and I'm embarrassed to say I really couldn't pick one for most of the year. I thought about it a lot, but I couldn't really decide. Then last week, I was listening to Ask the Podcast Coach, which was at the top of the list off and on. And I heard a clip from Jim Cullison from a Theme Thursday podcast. And I thought, wait, what was that? Tell me about that. And I discovered my newest podcast obsession, the Clifton Strengths Coaching blog. There are 2 seasons of this so far, covering 20, 25, I guess, different characters or strengths that a leader needs. I am absolutely fascinated with these. I'm listening to them, and they've got a companion guide so I can take notes. I can't stop listening. I'm enjoying these so much. So thanks to Jim Cullison for having one brief moment on Ask the Podcast Coach to help me find my best podcast for the year. Thanks a lot, Dave. It's always great listening to the School of Podcasting. Hope you have a good year. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Kim. Kim also helps me run the Northeast Ohio Podcasters Meetup. Find that at neohiopodcasters.com. And what I loved about that clip, she didn't say it, but I'd almost guarantee you that she went back to that podcast and downloaded the entire back catalog. Because I've always said, when people find an episode and you hit them right in the heart, they go, oh my gosh. And you just heard that just so brilliantly. So just honestly, like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I found this show. It's amazing. And when they find your stuff, they're going to say the same thing. Speaking of the Northeast Ohio Podcasters Meetup, let's throw it over to Matt.
Hey, Dave, it's Matt Rafferty from the Author Inside You podcast. You can find it at theauthorInsideYou.com. And on my podcast, we interview authors about writing, publishing, and promoting their first book. Well, lately, my favorite podcast has been Ask Drone U. It's a podcast about flying drones, and I recently got my pilot's license to fly a drone, and the information that they give on this podcast is just fantastic. It's like good conversation, it's informative, and it's fun. Plus, the good thing is the episodes usually range between 10 minutes and 20 minutes, which is just the perfect time for me. So if you get a chance, check out Ask Drone U. Thanks, Dave, and Happy New Year.
Thanks, Matt. Happy New Year to you.
Hey, fellow SOP fans, it's Steve Stewart from stevestewart.me. I no longer have a podcast because now I have a full-time job producing podcasts for others in the financial space. My favorite podcast is Stacking Benjamins. And if you want to know why, go back and listen to last year's My Favorite Podcast episode, and the previous year's, and the previous year's. And I think this is the 4th or 5th year, Dave. I don't know. Stacking Benjamins, my favorite podcast, period.
It's always a good day when you hear from Steve Stewart. If you've never listened to Stacking Benjamins, it is entertaining. It's like no other show you've ever heard. It completely breaks the mold of all other financial podcasts. So if you're looking to have more money and keep the stuff that you have, definitely check it out, stackingbenjamins.com.
Randy Cantrell, growgreat.com. The Peer Advantage is the podcast. One favorite podcast and why? One favorite podcast would probably be the last one that I listened to that I enjoyed. Well, check that. It would be the last one that I listened to because I'm going to bail out after about 15 seconds if I don't like it. So the last one that I listened to all the way through, and that would be why. A specific one, I wish I had one, but I don't. It depends on what I'm into at the time, which is what I think is great about podcasts. If I'm into psychology, then I may drift over to Dr. Henry Cloud. If I find somebody that was an interesting interview, then I may do that. If I want to get geek on with podcasting, it's obviously going to be Dave Jackson and the School of Podcasting, but I can be all over the board with it. So my favorite podcast is the last one that I listened to all the way through, and that would be why.
Thank you, Mr. Cantrell. Always making me think. Always appreciate that. Let's throw it over to a duo.
Hey, I'm Patrick Olson.
And I'm Aaron Eichhorst.
And we are from the Broken Line podcast.
If we could listen to one podcast, it would probably be besides our own, because we love our bar bait shop banter on fishing. It would probably have to be
Steve Rinella's Meat Eater. Would you agree, Aaron?
I would absolutely agree. And the reason why I love that show is because of how in-depth he gets into when he gets into his show. He really brings me from my couch or from wherever I am, really brings me into his environment, and I absolutely love it.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. And he's super smart, and it's like falling down a rabbit hole. Love it.
It's a good rabbit hole. Thank you, gentlemen. You can find Aaron and Patrick at brokenlinepodcast.com. Next up, one of my favorite podcasts to listen to, Mr. ComputerTutorFlorida.com, Scott Johnson.
Good morning, Dave. This is Scott Johnson from the Computer Tutor Podcast. Every Monday morning, I show you how to do something cool on your computer, and that's at ComputerTutorFlorida.com. My favorite podcast. It's funny. In years past, I've had to sit down and look at my podcast app on my phone to try to figure out which podcast I like the best. This year, I didn't have to do that thanks to a fairly new podcast that I look forward to called the Podcast Rodeo Show. I'm guessing a lot of your listeners already know about this show since it's hosted by the Dave Jackson. But for those that haven't listened to it yet, what happens is Dave picks a random show, listens to it for a few minutes, and then gives his honest first impression. And the key word here is honest. If a show sucks, you're going to say it sucks. I've actually started to kind of laugh in anticipation when you start playing an episode of some random show and either the intro music goes on too long with no purpose, or the co-hosts start off by chatting about stuff no one cares about, or maybe the audio quality sounds like they're in an airport bathroom. Whatever it is, I can now pretty much predict, Dave's not going to like that. And for anyone starting out with a podcast or maybe still in the planning stages, it's a good show to listen to in order to know what not to do. And if you haven't started a podcast yet because you think you're too late to the game and there are already too many podcasts out there to compete with, just listen to this show and you'll see that it's nothing to worry about because most of the other ones are terrible. My only suggestion would be that this show turns into a daily show or maybe at least a weekday show. From what I've heard when you talk about it, it sounds like you yourself are kind of surprised that it's become more popular than you expected it to be in a pretty short amount of time. Maybe that means you might know what you're doing by now. Thanks, Dave. Hope you have a great 2018.
Thank you, Scott. Yeah, I did that show as a joke because there's no prep because everything's just off the top of my head. And I did it to test a media host that I didn't think was going to be very good, and I was right on that. They're not very good. And let's take a quick 2-second tangent. Here's, if you want to hear Dave pop a cork, this is from me from last Wednesday.
Dave pops a cork in 5, 4, 3, 2...
And if you ever feel inclined to help us by supporting us financially,
are you going to ask for money literally in the first 10 seconds?
WOLC.com.
What a crappy first impression. Give me
Our
money.
gospel reading this Sunday is...
You know what?
Luke's...
Maybe it's because I'm tired. I'm tired of hearing Christian shows start off your podcast with, give me some money. You haven't given me any reason at all to give you money. Do you start off your sermon? Do you start off your what do you call it? Your service? With, hi, welcome to Word of Life Church. Give me money. Now we're going to sing a hymn. No. Okay, so if you're interested in that, you can find it at podcastrodeoshow.com. Sorry for the self-plug. I actually did later calm down because that really did just lit me like a fuse. And in the immortal words of Bono,
well, the God I believe in isn't short of cash, mister.
Holy cow, we've taken a tangent. Meanwhile, let's go back to Seth.
Hi, Dave. Hi, School of Podcast listeners. This is Seth, a.k.a. Xandrex of GeekvilleRadio.com and ClassicWrestlingMemories.com. And if I had to pick a favorite podcast, it would be Rebel Force Radio, available at RebelForceRadio.com. First and foremost, I am a huge Star Wars geek. Anybody that knows me knows that. Like, I can, speak in Star Wars. And Rebel Force Radio is the best Star Wars podcast out there. It also happens to have some of the best production values of any podcast really out there, Star Wars or not. It's done by two men named Jason Swank and Jimmy Mack, and it's also one of the shows responsible for making me truly want to get into podcasting. So not only is it a great show, it was an inspirational show to me. So if you're like me, and I know I am, and you like Star Wars, check out Rebel Force Radio at rebelforceradio.com.
If you like me, and I know I am, I love that line. Okay, if you want to hear a good Christian show, check out Cheri.
Hey Dave, Merry Christmas from Cheri Fields and the crew at the Creation Science for Kids show. You can find us at creationscience4kids.com. And this year I actually had something to say besides my all-time favorite of The School of Podcasting is my favorite podcast. But now on Thursdays, I have a show that always gets bumped to the top of the list, The Story Grid. It's for writers, and that's something that I want to be. I'm already fairly good at nonfiction, but when I found out that Tim Grohl was a nonfiction writer who wanted to learn how to write fiction from an editor, Shawn Coyne, and it was his journey, painful, slow journey to being able to put together a story, and especially going behind the scenes and explaining why good stories work. So those of us who are much more left brain thinkers, if you want to put it that way, can still write a story without it just having to be something that flows out of you organically, like the teacher I had in a course was trying to explain to me, and I just wasn't getting it. It's like, this is so foreign. Just tell me how to do it. Story Grid shows me, and it's a lot of fun. In fact, I've gotten to like both Tim and Shawn so much that I don't care if they go totally off topic and technically waste my time. I just want to hear from them. They have great chemistry, and week in and week out, they are explaining, going far more into the depths of how a story works than I would ever have dreamed I could have gotten without spending thousands of dollars. What's awesome is it shows that podcasting works. I not only follow Tim's email, although his courses are too expensive, but I just, for my birthday, bought Shawn Coyne's book, The Story Grid, because I know what he has in it is going to be so amazing. It's going to be excellent for me. So podcasting does work to bring in monetization, and it is such an awesome way to have long form content. So thank you, Dave Jackson. Love what you do.
Thank you, Cheri. I've said it before. People tune in, they get connected to the host, and when the host says, hey, I've got something to sell, people go and buy it because you're connected.
Good afternoon, Dave. This is Wynn from Butterflies of Wisdom, and my favorite podcast is Dreams in Drive. And Dreams in Drive is hosted by the fabulous Rena Kimmel, and she can be found at dreamsandrive.com.
Thank you so much, Wynn. A couple more, and then we'll get into the mega mix of the Because of My Podcast stories. Yeah, that's right up next. Are you ready, Bern? Okay, hold tight. We got a couple more to go through. Is that all right?
Hey, Dave. How you doing, man? This is Zach Demopoulos with Raising Rents as in Parents podcast, and that's a show that gives you tips about caring for an aging parent. My favorite show is Based on a True Story by Dan Lefebvre. It can be found on www.basedonatruestorypodcast.com. And the best way to describe Dan's show is it's history meets Hollywood. He takes those movies that you'll see that claim to be based on a true story, and he'll pick through the fact and fiction and share with you what actually really did happen and what is just there for your entertainment purposes. The reason why I really love Dan's show is because for me, it's a perfect trifecta. I'm a big history buff. I love to read history books, but I don't have a lot of time. And when I do read one, it's usually a historical narrative or historical fiction. I love going to movies. Again, I don't have a lot of time for them, but if I do go, I like to go to the ones that are based on something that happened in the past. What Dan does for me, and he's done it better than any history book, movie, or history teacher has done for me, no offense to teachers, Dave, is that he educates me while he entertains me, and I can then decide whether or not I want to go and read that book or go see that movie. And he saves me a lot of time. Plus, he even throws in a little trivia game called Two Truths and a Lie, where in the beginning of the show, he'll share 3 things with you, and at the end of the show, you guess which were true and which one was the lie. So he puts a little fun into it as well. I really do appreciate what Dan does. I almost feel like I'm a promoter for him, which is a compliment. And come to think about it, I have told quite a few people about it.
There you go.
He's a great storyteller, and I really enjoy his stuff. And it helps me become a better podcaster by listening to him as well.
Nice.
Dave, as always, thank you for asking us questions and for putting that special show together. Happy holidays to you. Happy New Year. And I look forward to hearing more from you and seeing you in 2018.
Zach, look forward to it. Here again, when you create content that resonates with your audience, when you positively impact your audience, they tell their friends. That's how you grow your audience. It all comes back to content. Yes, you still need to promote, but right there we saw the key ingredient, which was, wow, I'm telling a lot of my friends about that. And that's really why I do this episode, because I want the cream to rise to the top. I love it when the good guys win. And everybody I'm hearing about sounds like these are really great podcasts. So as we wind up this segment, I want to thank everyone who took the time to call in, to send it in. Really deeply appreciate what. Hold on a second. What?
Dave, hold up. Dave. Hey, Dave. Hey. Whew. Sorry, I just squeezed it in here. It's Erik K Johnson, the podcast talent coach, in with my favorite podcast of 2018. You know, each year I try and come up with a different podcast, something I've discovered over the year and really find myself listening to a ton. And this year I've been listening a lot to the Flip Lifestyle podcast with Shane and Jocelyn Sams. These guys are two teachers who have turned their knowledge into online business. They're not just teaching people how to do business online. They actually did business online. Shane used to be a football coach. He turned that into selling football practice plans online, turned that into a business. And Jocelyn was an elementary librarian, and she launched elementarylibrarian.com, where she sells elementary librarian lesson plans for librarians all across the country. And they made great money and great businesses out of those ideas. And now they teach people how to do just that for themselves. And that's what I love about them. They're real people who actually created online businesses selling something, and now they teach people how to do that rather than just teaching the theory and the philosophy. That's what I love about Flipped Lifestyle podcast. You can find it at flippedlifestyle.com. And that's my favorite podcast of 2017. Hope you have a fantastic 2018, Dave. It's Erik K Johnson, the podcast talent coach. You can find me and my podcast at podcasttalentcoach.com. See ya.
See ya. He also does a little show called Podcast Review Show.com with little old me. And we have a lot of fun on that show. I like that show because we really get to help people as well. It's a little different than Podcast Rodeo Show. That show, again, was started as a joke. This, we go over your podcast and your website and your technology from head to toe. Check it out, podcastreviewshow.com. The last person to chime in on what their favorite podcast is would be, well, me. And like everybody else who sent me a thing, it's really hard to pick one. And for me, it came down to when I fire up my phone on Monday, most of the people that I subscribe to come out on Monday. It's which one would I go to first? And for me, it's the Red Podcast. I can't remember if this was my pick last year, but it's David Hooper. It's a marketing show, and it's kind of theory, but it's theory based on things that other people have done, and it's not like big giant businesses, although in some cases it is, but it's marketing lessons from all sorts of different aspects of life. He actually at one point followed up with some people that were doing fake IRS calls. That was interesting. And then he did a reverse engineering on that. He actually interviewed somebody who is a high paid escort to see how that person goes about marketing their stuff. So he's got that Howard Stern. You're never quite sure what you're going to get. I love the fact that he's a bit snarky and sarcastic at times, which I think is hilarious. And it's usually one of those shows that is, he comes in, he makes his point, usually does a good tease on the next episode, and then gets out. I couldn't tell you how long a show is because I don't care, because if it's short or long, it still works. So check it out, redpodcast.com. Now, since 2005, I've been telling people you really should start a podcast. And one of the things that I've asked you to do, and if you can do this, please send it in, because season 2 is going to be starting here because of my podcast. And what that simply is if you can answer the question, because I wouldn't have been able to do this, but because of my podcast, blank. And so I have multiple ways I can help you start a podcast. We can do one-on-one consulting. If you like that approach, you might want to check out, I have a course, podcastinginsixweeks.com. This is a course I did for a couple of years. I took it off the market, had to kind of focus on some other things, and now I've brought it back. And we meet every Saturday for 2 hours. And by the end of February, you will be in iTunes. Now, if you're like, Dave, I need something a little more self-paced. Maybe I can't make it to all those meetings. They are recorded in case you can't make it. But if you want something a little more self-paced, then you can check out theschoolofpodcasting.com. And again, I have a coupon for that. That is listener, LISTENER. So here is my mega mix of because of my podcast. And to me, the amazing part of this is, on one hand, it's kind of long. But on the other hand, it's kind of long. It just keeps going with here's another benefit. Here's something else that somebody did. Here's something else. So it's not just me going, really, this is pretty cool. This could happen. This is living proof that you will have doors open when it comes to starting a podcast. And I would love to help you.
And my network of connections and the people that I know now and the resources I can pull from, it's mind-blowing.
I'm building relationships with people I never would have met otherwise. I'm getting email and meeting people from all over the world.
And now this fall, they're sending me to Peru.
I was able to get a dream trip to Lambeau Field and watch my beloved Green Bay Packers trounce the Chicago Bears.
I got 2 full-day tours and accommodations for 2 nights in Quebec City.
People from over 65 countries around the world come and check out what I have to say.
The podcast has allowed me to improve my conversational skills.
I got pitched to write a book.
I wrote my first book.
It's helped the new book that I'm writing on. It's helped my organization.
I was recognized in public.
There were people standing there waiting to meet me.
They came from all over to meet me.
My face is on the cover of a comic book that came out this week.
And they gave us each a very sizable amount of money for us to go to spring training in Arizona.
Over 222% they funded me.
I raced in the Baja 1000.
I would get free bottles of wine to try.
Because of my podcast, someone got a job.
I've done a few voiceover gigs.
It's gotten me 2 jobs in which in the job interview, I just talked about the podcast.
I'm a Microsoft MVP.
So now they've actually hired me to do a second podcast for them.
I'm now able to be an editor for Emerald City Productions.
I got an email from somebody at the Nebraska Department of Labor.
I have been approached by a nonprofit organization who wants to have me do videos and talk about my experiences.
So because of my podcast, I start Monday.
I'm in the category for the best multimedia for a personal finance blog.
I got a call a couple of weeks ago from a PR agency.
Offered me an opportunity to launch an online business.
I've had help putting 3 television shows on the air.
And now I work in media and communications for the federal government.
It's brought all us brothers back together, like when we used to live under the same roof. So that's great.
I get to sit down for 2 hours or a couple of hours a week with the kids.
Every year, I get press passes to the College World Series.
I've gone as a member of the press.
I could have 2 media passes.
Put the phone down, kind of jump in, screaming for joy. I can't believe ABC has called my personal cell phone.
I was on this media list, and Macallan Scotch sent a Maserati to pick me up.
And we're being invited as press to go to the filming of the 100th episode of The Blacklist in New York.
And we've had some ridiculously large guests.
Tony Shea, Seth Godin, John Bokenkamp, on the Blacklist Exposed,
General Helmore,
Pat Waters. Pat, she is the Chief Human Resource Officer for LinkedIn.
I've been very fortunate to be able to speak to some great NBA players.
Jim Kouzes, he is the leadership expert.
I met Burt Reynolds.
Just last week, when I suddenly found myself in the office of the Supreme Justice of the Norwegian Supreme Court.
Rich Karlgaard, he's the publisher of Forbes.
International opera singer Paul Groves introducing our show at Symphony Hall in Boston.
Everybody who played softball in the Olympics for the United States, I probably have their phone number in my phone.
We interviewed the creator. We interviewed the author that wrote the book that the show is based on. Actually met the author in person when he came here to Chicago for book tour. And then we interviewed basically the entire cast of season 1.
I have purpose now.
I no longer feel bored or restless at home. I have a greater sense of purpose, direction.
My podcast has been the most amazing business card ever.
I'm starting to do some consulting.
I have now just signed up my second client
and created an entirely new stream of revenue for my business.
I've billed 6,000 and landed a new client that will exceed $20,000 in annual revenue.
And signed up for my $2,000 coaching program on the spot in 5 seconds.
John, my co-host, has already billed more than $10,000.
I was able to attribute and account for about $10 million gross that came to my real estate companies from podcasting.
I actually got a Fortune 500 multi-billion-dollar client out of my podcast.
I've been able to leave a career as a physician.
Literally everything that I'm doing in my business is because of the podcast. Everything.
Lives are being changed.
Even though we've never met, but you've saved my life.
Is that I was able to put together a decently successful Toys for Tots charity concert.
I just wanted to really say thank you, because if I had not discovered your podcast, then I know for a fact that the end of my life would be October 31st of this year.
There you have it. So if you're thinking of starting a podcast, my hope is that clip made you go, all right, I'm starting a podcast now. And there are plenty of people out there with their shingle saying, hey, I can help you with a podcast. And you know what? Many of them can. Not many of them can say I've been podcasting since 2005. I've got 1.6 million downloads of just this show, a podcast about podcasting. I have won awards as an employee for a Fortune 500 company. I was Employee of the Year. I won a podcast award this year. I have a bachelor's degree in education. I've been helping people understand technology for over 20 years. And I know the Podcast Rodeo Show doesn't sound like it, but I actually have a lot of patience. And that's what makes me a good teacher, because I can break things down in a way that's easy to understand. And also, I've also worked in marketing companies before, so I can kind of help you shape that content again for maximum impact. So if you want to do the self-pay stuff, schoolofpodcasting.com/start. Use the coupon code listener. If you want one-on-one consulting, go out to schoolofpodcasting.com/schedule. And of course, starting January 6th, podcastingin6weeks.com. That is group coaching plus a year at the School of Podcasting, which means there's going to be more group coaching. So that's a lot of hands-on training there, plus the private Facebook group, plus priority email. And I've just added a private Slack group. And if you're like, what Slack? I'll explain it when you get here, but I'm really looking forward to working with you in whatever capacity you want. Simply go out to schoolofpodcasting.com/598. I've got links to everything right there. Thank you so much to everyone for sending in their Because of My Podcast stories. If I listed them all, the show would be another 46 minutes long. And that actual show, Because of My Podcast, will be coming back. I actually have a separate show that just does those. I always play them here first for the record, so there's really no reason to subscribe over there. But I have that show in case somebody says, hey, why should I start a podcast? And now I can just point them to this one file. But that is something that will be coming back as well. Also in the future, I'm going to be looking into what makes wow content. We're also going to be talking about what happened to the age of personalities. Yeah, we're going to talk into that. It's something I've noticed. And in looking at some of the podcast history, we used to have personalities. And sometimes I wonder if we're trying to make podcasting a formula. So we'll be talking about that. And as well as anything you would like to talk about, simply go out to schoolofpodcasting.com/contact. I would love to hear your thoughts, your ideas, any kind of feedback. I know somebody said I have too much treble in my podcast. I saw that in iTunes. Let me know. How's my audio sound? Always open for any kind of constructive feedback. I think that's the teacher in me. We're always open for any kind of constructive feedback. So thank you so much. Have a very Merry Christmas. Happy Kwanzaa. Happy Hanukkah. Happy, if you're a skeptic, happy Monday. And I will see you in 2018. Until then, take care. God bless. Class is dismissed. Happy New Year to you, Matt, geeky guy, for tuning in. If you're new to the show, I'm gonna bling, bling, bang. Yeah, I got lots of bling. I got gold teeth. It's awesome. All right, next up, we've got somebody whose name I can't remember. Hey, are you still here? This isn't a blooper. This is Dave. I realized I forgot to say, in 2 episodes, in 2 weeks, so I need this by January 1st, which is right around the corner, I'm doing episode 600, which will be an Ask Me Anything except about podcasting show. So simply record something, email it to me, dave@schoolofpodcasting.com, put episode 600 in the title and send it on over. You can ask me literally about anything that you want, whether it be life, love, money, whatever. It's going to kind of be a get to know Dave thing, and ask me anything. And that's what episode 600 is going to be about, because every 100 episodes, I completely shatter my format. Why? Because it's a podcast and you can do that if you want to. I look forward to hearing from you.